What's going on, DRF Players Podcast on a Friday, the Friday before the Friday of Breeders' Cup 2015. Matt Bernier, Mike Hogan, special guest Jonathon Kinchen, current leader of the NHC Tour. Is that correct? Is that the right way of nothing is sewn up officially?
Yeah, no, it's not official until December 31st, but it's going in the right direction. I've joked, I'm on the lead, and I went 49 and change to the half, so things can fall apart, obviously, but hopefully I can keep going.
That's good. Obviously, one of the hottest, if not the best tournament player in the world at this point. Let's just call it for what it is.
Sure.
We're not in the business of being, humble over here. We're just calling it like we see it over here. So
at least this year.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And obviously, we'll talk about the BCBC, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, which you'll be participating in at the very end of this show. We'll discuss about it, because I know, Mike, you just love the idea of me and Jonathon playing.
You guys are both playing, and we're talking about the Breeders' Cup. That, to me, seems like a theme for today's podcast.
Yeah, it'll factor
Just
in.
saying.
But as we have Jonathon in here, obviously, great handicapper. Well documented how your Kentucky Derby day has gone. We're going back to Kentucky. You're going to go in Tuesday, I believe. We talked about it earlier this week, yeah?
Yeah, Tuesday. I'm going to show up Tuesday, and then the awkwardness will really start when we actually meet for a little social time, and then we have to both be coy about what horses we like when we're hanging out.
You can only be so coy, though, because I have no problem just telling you, being like, well, I'm either going to win or lose probably on this one. So let's start off just general overview. Mike and I have had the opportunity with Pete to talk about some things, but from your standpoint, obviously, you still need to do some deep dive with certain races and whatnot, but general overview, is there anything in particular other than, the sort of the elephant in the room, American Pharoah trying for the Grand Slam? Is there anything else in particular that you're trying to key in on or you're most interested in seeing next weekend?
I think, I'm excited, obviously, as a fan, to see, almost every race. I mean, they're all kind of exciting. They're all exciting for their own reason. But I think that I'm excited to see this Golden Horn horse. I think that we all felt a little cheated when we never got to see Frankel over here. And obviously, he's not Frankel, but he creates kind of a similar buzz from that side of the pond. And so I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the showdown in the sprint between Run Happy and Private Zone and see what happens there, if we can get someone running at them, or if it's going to be those two going on with it. So I think those are all going to be really exciting races. I have a price horse in every race. I'm excited to see if I can kind of key around and make some good stuff happen in the BCBC. But obviously the final race of Saturday will be the one we'll all be watching.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Classic. Mike and I went over this earlier in the week when it was announced, when Beholder shipped in. She had a little bit of a fever. Apparently that has gone by the wayside and she's doing well. How heavily do you necessarily weight that little issue that she had? Because at this point, a hiccup is a hiccup in going into the biggest race of her career. Is it something that's going to completely make you look at her and say she can't win? Did you think going into it she had a chance?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that I try not to outsmart myself on, where, we have so much information in this day and age. It's like, yes, it's definitely not something that you want to hear. If they're not concerned, I'm not concerned, but I'm still trying to sort out if I think she's good enough. If I know most people have probably done what I've done, and if you dive through, her figures are really actually kind of low, except for the Pacific Classic, and so at a short price, and I guess the same can be said about American Pharoah. I'm just not quite sure if that's something I want to latch onto, considering what happened this week.
Has your tune changed at all over the past couple of days, Mike? From the last time we spoke, obviously we talked with Pete about it a little bit, but it sounds like all things are good. And like Jonathon said, I mean, if there's anyone to trust, it's Dick Mandela.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like when we talked on Tuesday, it was an unknown. Since then, it's been, I guess, for the camp, the best possible outcome, which is she seems to be doing well, no recurrence of any issues, no further training missed. She's going to have a workout at some point. They haven't said exactly when. But, on Tuesday, there was a little bit of a question mark and a little bit of a cloud. Now that appears to be gone. And so, I'm sort of with Jonathon. If you believe them, and I have no reason not to believe them, I don't think it's going to take a whole lot out of her. It's not the sort of thing that you want to see prior to the biggest race she's likely to ever run in her career. Yet at the same time, if you love her and you were keying on her, I don't think it's enough for you to jump off the bandwagon. Me, myself, I'm with Jonathon. I feel like she absolutely freaked in the Pacific Classic, but she got the perfect setup, the perfect trip, and I think she was beating, let's face it, inferior horses than what she's going to face next week.
NHC Tour Leader Jonathon Kinchen with us on the DRF Players Podcast. Matt Bernier and Mike Hogan. Run through the Twitter handles real quick. You may, other than Pete, now we got to give Fornatel some credit. He can't be here, but he has got a great Twitter handle, obviously, Outlooms Boldly.
Yeah.
A nod to Tom Durkin. Your Twitter handle is right there, probably second, and I think there's much more to it when you see the picture and the story behind it.
Yeah, I used to have, when I was in college at the University of Texas, I had like an afro. And then
afro?
Yeah, it was like an afro. Yeah, because I didn't really pick it out. But
okay,
and then,
all right.
And then
like
I got
Oscar
dreads.
Gamble?
Right, no. And then I had dreads, and so the big hair thing stuck. It was like my video game handle forever. And then when I signed up for Twitter, I got it. I've had a couple of my friends say, man, you should change it to like @Jonathon Kinchen. I was like, no way, I'm leaving it.
At this point, @UT Big Hair, that's him. @DRF Formulator, @Bernier_Matt. Let's get into your boy. Obviously, we went over this a little bit, kind of teased it. The big score, the big day you had, Kentucky Derby Day down at Churchill. A lot of it revolved around American Pharoah. You were spot on about him. Are you as bullish coming into this spot where, let's just call it for what it is, he's going to need to run the race of his life if he's going to win?
No, I'm not as bullish as I was that day. I think there's obviously some horses in here that can beat him, and including the one we talked about, in the last couple of minutes, Beholder. But, I do believe that at this point he does possess a tactical advantage. I don't know. I thought that in the Travers, and Frosted kind of threw a wrench in the equation there. So maybe that's going to happen again, and maybe they're going to ride him forwardly. I would think that they learned that if they run with him, that compromises their chances. So, I mean, there's a strong chance he's going to be out there winging on his own, and so I think he'll be ultra tough. But man, I just don't know if it makes a ton of sense at the price. And I'll be honest with you, depending where I am in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and the position and the amount of money I have, if I had to pick a horse that I could go all in on, and that horse could help me win, that's the one I would like to do it on. But it's going to be tough.
And I think that brings up an interesting point, and we'll dive into a little bit of your BCBC
strategy. I love it.
Desire at this point right now. I said to these guys earlier in the week that the classic for me from a strategy standpoint has become a bit of a conundrum, because I basically, the day before this whole fever thing had happened with Beholder, I had almost gotten to the point where I convinced myself I was going to pick her. Like, if I needed to make a pick, which we will have to do for the paper, I was going to pick Beholder. Then this little hiccup happens, and it obviously doesn't sound like it's a do or die sort of thing, but it's certainly not what I want to hear coming into this. But you look at it and you say it's the classic is the finale. How many people are going to be going into it with that mindset of, if I have $15,000, $20,000 and I can get 2-1 on American Pharoah, I'm just going to dump it and hope that he ends up coming through for what we think is the best horse with a tactical advantage. Conversely, if he is a slam dunk and you're playing catch-up, boy, how are you going to try to navigate something or make something out of nothing if you think he is just so far superior to everyone? I'm kind of with you, though. At a shortish number, it's very tough for me to marry myself to a horse who, on paper, right now has not run fast enough.
Well, and let's even back up a second, too, because the race prior to that is going to have the aforementioned Golden Horn, who is likely to be a very big favorite, and is likely, I guess, arguably your most likely winner on Saturday. Right?
I think many people would say that.
So from a strategy standpoint, I think that's something that you guys have to figure out is, if it ends up running chalk in the last two, how do you set yourself up early in the day to be in a winning position? And that's the bit. I mean, regardless of, I like X horse in this race, that's where the strategy and the wagering and the jockeying for position really, I think, becomes huge.
Right, and I don't know about Matt, but what I've done this year, and sometimes and with awful results, is I don't let what I think is going to happen later in the card impact what I'm going to do earlier in the card. I just play what I think is going to happen, and then you deal with the situation that you're given. And if I get to the last race and I've got $12,000 and the leader's got $70,000, then I'm going to bet a $50 try with tonalist on top. and hope that my American Pharaoh opinion of him being, and then if he wins, then we all cheer and we're happy, and I go home with no money and whatever. But I don't want to do something early like try to beat Songbird because Golden Horn and American Pharaoh are going to win, and then I try not to do that because you get inside your own head and then it gets confusing, and and you end up putting yourself in a bad position.
Well, and I even think of it from other sort of tournament standpoints. Now, we'll talk about your success at the Gulfstream contest a little while ago, but I look at a contest like the NYRA events where at Saratoga this year, the idea, Jonathan, you played in it. You were there with all the guys. The idea that a winning total was under $100, you can only project ahead so far and say, okay, if we get to the very end and it ends up chalking out, well, then what do I do? Well, we have no idea. I mean, Friday and Saturday could be a chalk fest to begin with.
For sure.
But the beauty of the live money sort of contest is you can make something out of nothing. And I guess that's the biggest thing that I'm kind of in a position now where I'm trying to think, we'll get into it a little bit more, but I want to go back to you with the Gulfstream contest. You were in an interesting scenario where you didn't necessarily need to win, but you got into that sort of final race and you said, there's something that I like. Why play it? I don't want to say conservatively, but let's go for it. You wanted to win.
Right. Well, it is actually a good example for what happened there. Is I was in second place, but I was $230 ahead of the person that was in third, and so I didn't have to bet. And the guy that was in front of me was like $1,500 or whatever ahead. And I liked one horse, but he was the favorite. $220 to win on that horse wouldn't have worked. So I bet a $10 try, $220 worth of a $10 try, and I hit it and paid $3,000, and then I ended up winning the tournament. So that's kind of the same position. Is you have to take your opinion. That's what's great about live money, which you don't have in the $2 win place, is that you can take your opinion and you can create value through your opinion on how you bet it. I mean, I don't care what happens. If you bet a $300 cold trifecta, if it comes chalk, I mean, it could be a pretty good return. And so, but it's having the opinion to do that. So you just have to, you can, no matter who's running or how short they are, you can make the value there.
Well, and that's the thing. I think you've got to look at it and say, you know what, just because the American Pharaoh sort of thing, let's just use him as the example, and we can go even further with Golden Horn. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, he's the most likely winner.
Sure.
And maybe if you're in that sort of catch-up position, Jonathan, like you said, even if I think that he's going to win and I key him on top, I can still try and make a case for some sort of craziness happening where a horse like a Hard Aces run second or third, and all of a sudden at 40 to 1, that trifecta, if you play it for a high enough denomination, I mean that could ultimately help you out. But it's one of those things where, like you said, the live money sort of contest that allows you to kind of turn chicken something into chicken salad. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting format. I guess of the 2 days. Now, that's the other thing that's interesting about the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge is it's not strictly Breeders' Cup races. On Saturday, it's the entire day with the exception of the finale. So the race after the Classic does not count.
Right.
But on Friday, it's the entire card. And I think that kind of brings up something interesting. Are you looking to get most of your money in? Obviously, there are certain rules, and if any of you are unfamiliar with it, on Friday, you need to bet 5 races, $600 minimum at least. You can bet more than that if you want, but you have to bet at least $600 in 5 different races. On Saturday, it's the same deal, except it's $900. So that totals your $75. It's a $10,000 entry. $2,500 is your entry fee. You play with $75. Got that out of the way. Of the 2 days, are you trying to get your money in, you think, into the Breeders' Cup specific races, or do you want to try to take advantage of maybe a race on the undercard Friday that maybe most of the players haven't necessarily done as much time with?
Yeah, no, I'll bet the races that I have opinions in. Unfortunately, last year, I brought like 7 friends with me, so we were kind of hanging out. I didn't really get a lot of the undercard races done. And so when I got to the track, I just kind of made the decision that, like, I'm going to pray that nothing crazy happens, and I'll just move to the other race. This year I plan to, I'll play whatever's available and get to where I can. I will say one strategy that I might look at is, and I'm probably lying when I say this, is trying to just maintain my bankroll on Friday and go into Saturday with a full bankroll. I don't see myself betting show bets. I know a lot of guys do that. They'll bet short price horses to show on Friday so that when they go into Saturday, they have their $7,500 still there. I'm not wired that way. I can lie and say that I'll think about it. But I might do some more conservative things on Friday so that I have more money left for Saturday, so I don't have a Bobby's Kitten blow up like I did last year before this year. So
now I can understand that, because I went into last year saying if I can get into Saturday as close to the original bankroll as possible, I'll be happy. I think I ultimately got into it with 5,000 going into Saturday, so I was down about 2,500, which I wasn't too bent about. I still had plenty of, and knowing that my biggest, strongest opinion was coming on Saturday. Ultimately, I think that's the thing too, that a lot of people, you know, you can plan ahead and do X, Y, and Z, but John, like you said, at the end of the day, you know, you've got to, there's a difference between planning and actually executing. And it's a very difficult thing. You can get caught up in the moment. And you know, if you see if someone throws up a big number in race 3 on Friday, some people are, whether they want to believe it or maybe it's just an experience thing or their personality, some people are going to panic, knowing that, wow, you know, all of a sudden go ahead, Jonathan.
I wouldn't look Friday. If I was you, avoid it. You know, you're going to see them. There are going to be screens everywhere, but try to avoid it. It does you no good.
I think that's how it is. It's just my personal feeling with all contests, where on day one, you're probably not going to win on day one.
Well, even still, when you talk about a plan, you can still think, okay, I'm keying around a horse that I'm expecting to be 6-1. And then the actual wagering, you know, if they're half that price, you have to adjust how you're going to play it in order to maximize your payout, maximize your value. And so if you're too locked into a plan, you might not have a plan B or a plan C or whatever. You know, it's like that the famous Mike Tyson quote. You know, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
And that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me last year, and I'm at least promising myself that won't happen this year. Is that I got to a point where Bobby's Kitten was my play that I was going to bet all my money on, and I was fearful that he was going to be 4-1. And so when my bankroll started to dwindle down, and I saw the leaderboard and people were climbing, I started to panic, thinking that, well, $2,500 on Bobby's Kitten isn't going to be enough to put me in position. And so the mistake that I made was I bet $2,500 a show on Stonetastic the race before that to try to get a little bit of extra money. Well, then Bobby's Kitten goes off at 9-1, which would have been beautiful at $2,500, and obviously Stonetastic ran off the board.
Now, was the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge last year your first live money contest?
Well, I played Hawthorne, which was a $500 tournament, $500 live bankroll, but you can bet anything. So, like, I was betting multi-race stuff. That was my first one that I played in, where you're betting, you know, you're betting tries and exactas and live money. And I thought about that actually 2 days ago. Like, it makes me, I feel a little bit more prepared now than I was then.
Sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, too, where if it's a new format for someone, if you've never played in the BCBC, yeah, I mean, it can be a little bit daunting, not only because of the style, but let's call it for what it is. If you're not used to betting such large amounts of money, that can be enough to weigh on your psyche a little bit, too. I know when I went to the window for the Texas Red Race last year, and I went back and checked 3 different times to make sure that I hadn't punched numbers wrong, because I was freaking out a little bit, thinking, like, I have got $2,500 tied up into this race. For me, that's insane. I mean, that's, you know, I never in a million years would be betting that much. But in this format, if you do end up putting that much through the windows, there's obviously no reason not to play in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, which, again, is a little bit of a commercial.
Right.
You still have a little bit of time. Get involved. If you're going to play, if you plan on putting 10,000 through the windows Friday and Saturday, you should play in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Yeah. There's no reason not to. Right. You get the prize money on top if you do well, and you get NHC seats.
Right. Or if you've got 8 to 10 friends that are looking to put in $1,000 through the window, there's a world in which you guys can, you know, play in that together as well.
Absolutely, because I mean, the prize itself is astronomical. I think they were planning on it. If it's based on, I could be wrong. Don't hold me to it. If it's 300 entries, I think the prize pool for the first place is supposed to be around $250,000. I mean, we're looking at, I think, 850,000 they were talking for a prize pool.
Well, I don't remember the exact details last year, but didn't the guy that won it all, he put something like 10,000 to win on Bayern in the Classic?
Yes.
And he turned
8,000, I believe.
Or 8,000. So he turned 9-1 into between the winning mutual payout that he got on his original bet. and the prize money, he turned 9-1 into like 32-1 or something like that.
Well, and he qualified online for $100 on BC Qualify.
Which again, I mean, if
crazy.
you need any other reason to think about for next year playing on BCQualify.com, I mean, that's it in and of itself. I mean, the man turned $100 into $300,000 or whatever it ended up being. So that's another interesting point, though. Let's talk a little bit, not necessarily about individual races themselves right now at the moment, but the past few years, we've seen that this Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, ultimately, it's come down to the Classic.
Yes.
That's when something has changed,
Yes.
whether it's, and generally, on a much simpler sort of, we talk about all these exotic wagers. Although exactas have come into play, they've largely been due to big win wagers on
Correct.
horses that are what the player would deem to be fair odds.
Correct.
Does that, Jonathan, play into your mind frame at all? Thinking, you know what, I guess let me think of a better way of phrasing this. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, I was going to say, but part of it is, and this is something I was mentioning to Jonathan before you got in the room, the Classic, historically, 31 runnings of the Classic, 8 of them have been won by the favorite. Only 8 of 31. That's, what, 24, 20, 25%, 26%, something like that, which is less than what you would normally expect. Compare that to the juvenile fillies, 17 of 31.
Okay.
Compare that to the distaff, 14 of 31. So in recent years, you've had a 9-1 Bayern. You've even had Blame at a square price beating Zenyatta, and certainly Drosselmeyer. You've had these price horses where if it were the other way around and Zenyatta won that photo, you wouldn't necessarily have a huge bet at odds on being what's affecting the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, if you get my drift.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where it has to also come down to what your price you're willing to accept. If you're willing to accept, if you think American Pharoah is the most likely winner and you think he's even valued at 2-1, it might not make as much sense to put $10,000 to win on him, but to tie $10,000 up in tries and exactas where you're able to turn that into more than the 2-1 you'd get if you put it to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that if you're not thinking that way and you are playing in the contest next weekend, I would just strongly suggest you have to start thinking outside the box. You can't necessarily just look at it in a very narrow-minded sort of way. Now, there's also something else that goes into this. When we talk about the money, we talk about how some people, this is their first time with this sort of thing. There are people playing in this event that will be very content walking out if they can double up, take their 10 and turn it into 20.
It's real cash.
It's real money. At the end of the day, you are going up to the window, you're cashing out, and you're going home. I know for someone in Jonathan's position or someone in my position, obviously we would like to win some money. But I think there's a part of us, too, that, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to win. I like the idea of being able to say that I won. Where do you stand with that?
Yeah, no, I'm prepared to walk away with 0. I don't need an HC seat, so staying pat at 10th or 9th doesn't really do me any good. So yeah, no, I think you have to do that. In order to win, you have to, at some point, I believe to win this thing, you either have to hit something extremely crazy, like a $100 try that wins you 70 grand, or you're going to have to risk like a significant amount of your bankroll in order to win. So, and to the point that this thing has been won in the Classic the last 3 or 4 years or whatever it is, I don't complain. I'm not a tournament complainer. Those people drive me crazy that complain about this and that and this and that and that. We're all in it together. You knew the rules when you signed up. I do wish, I think it would serve for a better tournament if they took the leaderboard down in the last 3 races.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
I just, and look, this is nothing against, I think his name's Bob Trader that won last year with Bayern, but it becomes a little bit mathematical at the end, right? You're just like, okay, look, I got 10 grand, and who are the 9 horses or the 3 horses I can play that catch the guy who's winning? And I would prefer that it stayed more in the lane of betting your opinion rather than betting the board. But, I'm not going to get mad that I got beat on that. Just a suggestion. This is a suggestion box. I'll drop it in there. I think it would be better, but that's it.
I love it. Well, we've talked, see, this is great because before we got on the air, we were talking, oh, we'll talk maybe a little bit of BC. And I said, that for me is the lead. So I'm glad we've talked as much. I'm glad we've talked. Well, Pete's not here. I got to play the role of the tournament guy. Because we've got both of you. It's basically doing an interview about your BC strategy. So, Pete, I hope I did okay in your filling your shoes. I probably didn't do as well as you, but forgive me. But anyway, let's now move on to some of the actual races and talk about some of the opinions that you guys have, because I want to make sure we don't give them short shrift. We got four on Friday. Well, let's start. Let's just go chronologically. We got 4 on Friday. The first of the 4 is the juvenile turf. We'll find out. When do we find out? Later today, I think we find out.
I don't know if it's today or Monday.
Monday?
It's one of the two. Obviously, they're drawing post positions on Monday.
Drawing post positions on Monday. I think we find out later. It could be later today.
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, we'll find out after this who all is likely to go, but we've got all the pre-entries, and we've got the lists of the first and second preferences. Juvenile turf. I'm guessing neither of you are going to use this as a key race in your BC strategy, but is there anybody in here that's jumping out at you?
I might.
You might.
No,
all right.
I was actually chatting with Pete this morning because he's my Euro connection, and I'll advise everyone to listen to Nick Luck. I heard him on Steve Bick. If you have an opportunity, the last 3 or 4 years, he's been like instrumental in understanding this Euro situation. Obviously, you can hop on YouTube and watch the replays, but hearing him kind of explain and tell some of the stories, I think is great. And so, him and Pete both got my attention this morning on Hit It a Bomb, this Aiden O'Brien horse that just won on the synthetic, the Warfront Colt. I don't want to misquote the number, but I heard in that last race, he came home his last 3 furlongs like in like 34 flat or sub 34. So I'll take a look at that race and see if you get any interest from him. And then my kind of long shot crazy horse, if he gets in that I'm interested in, is Highland Sky. I mean, he got eliminated in the Pilgrim. He was making the same run Isotherm was and just kind of got shut off. So obviously we all have to dig a little bit deeper in these races, but those are 2 horses that I'm pretty interested in so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was, it sounded ridiculous, but I was emailing Mike and Pete the other night at 2 o'clock in the morning as I'm going through replays. And I go, this Hit It a Bomb, I don't know why he was on the all-weather last time.
Yes.
But he kicks like an absolute monster.
I'm surprised he's only entered in the turf, because there was talk about after that last race them actually preferring the juvenile.
Well, and then that would at least make a little bit more sense why they ran him on the all-weather. Again, I don't know why, but point is, like Jonathan said, and as multiple people have said, this thing looks like he could be legit.
I think, here's my prediction. If he goes, he's your favorite.
Probably.
I think everyone is talking about this horse. Not to disappoint you guys. I'm not sure you're going to get much of a price.
Well, no, keep in mind, I'm not saying that I'd be betting him.
Right.
Because I don't, again, I think he is going to be a steam horse. Again, without going into details, and that's the other thing, too, I don't want to have Jonathan have to tip his hand too much. I'm not saying that, everybody and their brother's listening, but at the end of the day, info is info. I like Camelot Kitten a lot. I thought of the horses coming out of that Bourbon, considering the ground, the way that he kicked on at the end, I thought he was very good. I think he's got a big chance. It depends, though. I am got to be honest. I'm a little bit concerned. The way that the Keeneland course has been playing, you have had very few horses come from way out of it. So unless they go blistering early on,
harmonize.
I'm telling you, I think I've got it charted where I don't think there have been more than 5 horses all meet in routes that have come from more than 6 lengths back at second call. But they have all been within probably 2 lengths, 3 lengths.
But in his debut, he showed he didn't need to be that far out.
But my concern is his best. You got to keep in mind the fractions in that debut as well. I mean, my concern is that he's going to have too much to do. But without going too in depth, I think he's interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned him, because we can tie it back to one of Jonathan's favorite horses. He's a foal to Bobby's kitten.
He is.
So.
And he doesn't look like the insane person that Bobby's kitten is either. So that's good.
Yeah.
One other question before we move on to the next race. Did either of you watch the debut from Catapult?
Jonathan, go ahead, please.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
I said to Dan Illman last night before I left here, I said, I think the best horse, I don't know if he's going to get in, I think the best horse in the race is Catapult.
So this was Sunday, right? This was
a few days ago.
A few days ago. He hadn't even run yet.
Yeah.
He debuts, and he posts everyone in the field in North America, everyone even in the AEs that need to get in, he posts your highest buyer figure.
No, I mean, if you watch the replay, he's very green.
Yeah.
But he has major ability.
Yeah.
There's no denying that.
And
I don't think he's going to get in.
No, I don't think he will either. But after that race, Chad Brown in the connection said, let's pre-enter him in the BC. Why not?
That's aggressive from Chad, and that's not that's not something that he typically does. You know, he's more the type that's like, oh, we got all next year. You know,
right?
But it's impressive.
Watch that debut. It was pretty good. It's pretty good.
Dirt Mile.
Jonathan,
I know there's a couple horses in here that we've at least discussed over the time, whether we saw you up at Saratoga or wherever else. Liam's Map, I mean, he obviously is going to be the heavy favorite. Do you look at this one and say he's a cinch, move on, or do you try to beat him?
No, I'm gonna beat him. I mean, if he was, I don't see why he wouldn't be in the Classic if he was just like chomping at the bit and just ready to rock and roll. So that to me is not a great sign. He's going to be a short price. I wanted Appealing Tail. I wanted Appealing Tail when he ran against Honor Code in the Kelso. Unfortunately, his price is going to be a little bit lower than I want. So I keep kind of landing back on Tapiture. I thought Tapiture's race in the ACAC was pretty darn good. We all know Asmussen doesn't really crank his horses first time out, so you got to first time off a break. So you got to think that this horse is going to improve. He ran well in this race last year. He can kind of sit off of it a little bit and make a run in a race. I think we were talking earlier with the shorter stretches. I think people are going to think that it's going to be more speed favoring, but like we kind of all semi-agreed, that run to the first turn is going to encourage horses to be used early and kind of maybe set it up later for a little bit of a closing kick. And so Tapiture for me, I think will be one that I'm definitely interested in using. And then you can't just gloss over Lee. I don't know where their final decision is going to be, where they're going to run Lee, but I was super impressed with Lee's race in Stephen Foster, and unfortunately things didn't go well at Saratoga, but then ran well on the turf at Woodbine, so I would give that one a look as well, underneath or even possibly on top in certain types of plays.
Liam's Map for me, I mean, I just hate the idea that in the Woodward he had such an easy lead and changed leads late. You watch his workout down at Keeneland. I don't know if they've got another one posted, but the one I had watched when they throw it on YouTube, he changed leads in the workout again. Late in the stretch, I don't like that. I think it's all the reasons. I don't want to get into the whole thing where people on Twitter are going buck wild about, should he run in one spot or the other and whatever it may be. But, I mean, I don't want to fault, like a lot of people have pointed out, why does everyone assume this is Todd Pletcher's call? And two, at the end of the day, if you don't think he can stay the distance, you're fighting a losing battle. So
right. If
for some reason that is the case, again, I don't know what it is. Personally, don't really care because now it's just an opportunity for me to try to take a shot against the 4-5 shot. But I like Wicked Strong in here. I've never ever liked this horse, but I think the turn back is very beneficial for him. Problem is, he always takes money, so I don't know. Yeah. He's probably going to be 4-1. And I don't want 4-1 on a horse who likes to run second and third very often.
I'm with you, Matt, and I mentioned it on the Tuesday podcast. This race, as much as probably more than any other BC race, is going to be dependent upon post position. And especially if Liam's Map gets a bad post position, I think he's completely vulnerable at a short price. I think Wicked Strong has run some sneaky good races this year. He's been a consistent, people talk about him taking a step back from last year. I don't know if that's the case. I think he continues to run his races. He's just landed against horses that are better than him. He's not against Tonalist this time. He's going to have a different pace dynamic than what Liam's Map threw up in the Woodward. He's an interesting one. Price is the concern there because he may be second choice, although I think Red Vine and Lee will both take money if they're in. Another one that I'm interested in that I think is improving and could still be good is Street Strategy. I think he probably wants a flat mile. I liked him in the Oaklawn Handicap. He didn't really run that well that day. I guess he had kind of a wide trip, but frankly, that's his only bad race he's run, all year. And I think there's some upside there. The real sneaky long shot I'll throw in is War Story.
You going to pick the entire field?
No. Well, I'm just giving you long shots here. War Story, I think, I think is going to run on late. I don't know if he's good enough to win.
That's fair.
I think War Story ran sneaky good in the Pennsylvania Derby, and I think if he improves a bit, he could hit the board at a big price.
Juvenile Phillies Turf Mile, obviously on the grass, a race that I have to still do a lot of homework on, so I'm not going to throw anything out there. Obviously, everyone loves Harmonize. Jonathan, are you on the same camp, same board with them?
Right. I mean, yeah, but you were not the only ones that saw that 17 wide move, and unfortunately her price is going to reflect that. And there's going to be a couple fillies that are going to come over from Europe that I think are going to be pretty tough. Illuminate, Alice Springs, both. You know, Alice Springs, like when I first looked down, and I could be completely wrong, but I got that feel of Giovanni Boldini. Mm-hmm. I know it's, you know, I think that was a Coolmore horse as well, and Aiden O'Brien, and so I guess one horse that I'm pretty interested in, because I liked the horse I liked the horse's turf race before, that's Landover Sea, when she ran on the turf, and then she ran into Songbird, and you know, ran credible enough, and so you know, I'm going to give that horse a little bit of a shot. And then this horse, Mirage, I don't know if she'll get in. And that Surfer Girl got absolutely shut off on the inside. And so first time in the U.S., and they found it still that it made sense to enter her here. So I'll take a look there as well. That's pretty much it. I think it's a little bit interesting with the gliding by with Bill Mott. Looks like a private purchase off of that race at Woodbine. Not sure if she'll get in or not, but those are kind of some areas that I'm going to start with.
Mike?
I need to do the full work, but so far it's Illuminate for me. I really liked her race last time at Newmarket, where she got the lead late and then just tired slightly and got beat by Lumiere, who I think is a nice one. She finished ahead of Alice Springs in that race. I'm interested in her. I think it's also the filly version of Catapult is also entered in this race for Chad Brown. She won her debut on Saturday last week. That's Price to Perfection. She's a foal to Miss Temple City, and she ran really well in that race. And again, Chad thinks enough off of her to enter her into this one. That's kind of where I'm leaning now. I think Harmonize is likely, but I'm just afraid about the price.
Distaff wraps up Breeders' Cup Friday next week, a week from today. Beholder obviously going to probably go to the Classic, barring some sort of major issue, and I think that'd be a red flag anyways. I think this race could be absolute bombs away. Kinchen, what do you think?
And I don't want to say it too loud because this will probably be. I love Yahilwa in here, and I don't know if she's good enough to win, but.
You and Hogan.
Yeah, have you listened to any of the last few podcasts? I've been talking about Yahilwa nonstop.
Oh well, I'm glad that we're both right, but I feel bad that I hadn't heard that. So
that's okay. That's okay.
If you watch her last 4 races, like you get this sense of like she's pretty good. They went pretty fast at Churchill. She stayed on, and she lost to Sheer Drama, which is Sheer Drama and Frivolous, but there's nothing wrong with that. And then the Beholder race, she beats the rest of the field by 3, and you know obviously she can't beat Beholder. She's fast. She'll be forward. I think she's got a really good shot. I want Warren's Veneta to get back into form. We'll see if that happens. Not sure if it will. I'm completely against Wedding Toast. Although it's a little bit nerve-wracking to me that Kieran is like 56%, like 18 starts at Keeneland on the dirt. He's just been going really well there, but she's had slow paces every time, and I just can't get into it.
Jonathan, I will throw this stat out for you, and I don't know how many it's at. I think it's at 17 or 18 or something. It added to the tally with Sentiero Italia losing. He's winless in the last 5 years at Keeneland in graded stakes.
Fair enough. See, I knew that Mike would help me get off the horse even more.
Yeah, I'm with you on Yahilwa. I think she's going to be a great price. I love the last few races, and I think part of it is if you look through her PPs, you're going to see she's been handled by others that she's likely to face. She finished 3rd last race to Untappable and Got Lucky, where I think she did probably the most running in the race and really set it up late for Got Lucky. She finishes a clear 2nd to Beholder, and the thing I loved about that Clement Hirsch was she changed her running style. She showed she can actually pass horses. She showed she can rate a little bit. She showed some versatility, and that was sort of the concern that I'd had to her prior to that race, is she seemed to need the lead type. So I really like her. The other one that really interests me at a big price, actually, the two AEs, if they both draw in, will draw some attention from me. I love Calamity Kate. I think she's a really fast horse and maybe the fastest horse in the field, even with Yahila in there. She could get, if not a clear lead, at least a lead. And against horses that I think are a little questionable, that's huge. And, and I think Peace and War is just a nice 3-year-old filly who's kind of rounding back into form after having that issue last year after the Alcibiades. And she's one that could be rolling late, and it could be a big price.
Before we flip over to Saturday, and we'll pick the pace up a little bit because I don't want to be too long-winded. Jonathan, you and I were up in the green room after the Spinster a couple weeks ago. Has your tune changed on Untappable at all?
I thought about that yesterday, too. I remember we said before the race that, we didn't want her to win because we wanted to bet her back. And then it just didn't feel gutsy enough for me. And when we were leaving, I was like, no, that's not the way I wanted it to happen. But then now I'm kind of back on board a little bit. I mean, I'll definitely try to hook her up. I think that if you look at her performances last year, she was never that close to the pace. She's always 2 and 3 lengths off. And it feels like recently she's somehow gotten closer to the pace. And I think that she needs to take back a little bit more. And I'm hoping that will happen in this spot. I mean, she hasn't really embarrassed herself. She just hasn't done what we expect her to do based on her performances last year.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. She has the back braces, and if for some reason you get 5 or 6 to 1, I wouldn't talk anybody off that. Let's go on to Saturday. First Breeders' Cup race of the day is Juvenile Fillies, mile and 16th on the main track. My opinion, I've said it multiple times. I'm still going to say it. I think she would win the Juvenile. I think Songbird's the best 2-year-old, male or female, in the country. Where do you land in this race, Jonathan?
I'm just praying that they bet Rachel's Valentina. Just
Me too.
Please, just better. I'm going to get one of those planes that says Rachel's Valentina is Rachel Alexander's daughter. It's going to fly by all day long, and then I'm going to invest the rest of the money on betting Songbird. So I completely agree with you.
What do you think?
Unfortunately, we're 3 for 3 here. I think she's by far the best in the race if she runs her race, or even if she regresses a little, I think she should beat this field. So the question for you guys, with that in mind, and her likely favored, maybe even a short favorite, depending on what happens with Rachel's Valentina from the betting standpoint. In the BCBC, do you key her up in tries and exactas and try and make a score here, or do you just, it's early, play it a little conservatively and try and conserve bankroll for later?
Go ahead, Matt.
I think it depends, and I hate to say it like that, but there's a part of me, I've got to go through and price it all out again. But if the morning line that Mike Watchmaker brought up is correct, I may not even bother going that route.
If you get 5 to 2, I think
because I think she should probably be, again, I got to do all of it. I think she probably should be 6 to 5, and if I can get more than almost 115% overlay. I mean, I'll take it and run and hope that maybe this is one of them that I'll drop 1,000 to win on, and and know that that won't be the make or break for the day, but that could definitely be nice padding for the bankroll.
Yeah, my buddy Nick Timmer was a rollover in his grave. Well, not his grave. He's going to get really mad at me for this when I say this out loud. But what's wrong with this strategy? What's wrong with me getting to my 7,500, betting it all on Songbird to win? Okay, then how much money am I? I'm bad at parimutuel math.
Well, let's say you double. If even money you double it to 15. Let's say a little more than that. Let's say
you get the 17.5.
Let's say or 20 even.
So then
even 20.
Okay, then I take that and I bet it on Golden Horn at 4 to 5, 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. So then
you probably turn that
35, high 30s.
Well, no, but I mean at 3 to 5 would be a little bit less than that because you figure you're probably it was
4 to 5.
We'll call it 30.
Okay. Then I bet all that on American Pharoah.
Then you probably put yourself in a position where you're going to be there at the end. Now, again, I know Nick would probably strangle you if he had the opportunity, but the only problem then becomes, you're all in, man.
That's your cold pick 3, not in consecutive races.
Right. No, I mean, but it's just pointing out that you can do whatever you want in this event.
Sure.
And have success without having to be a 20 to 1 guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this, because you said you might put 1,000 to win on Songbird. What about combining your two opinions here, which is Songbird is your likely winner, Rachel's Valentina is vulnerable. Putting 1,000 or even 500, maybe 500 to win on Songbird, 500 in tries where you're playing out Rachel's Valentina.
No, yeah, I mean, again, it's got a. We still got a lot of things.
Yeah.
We have time. I know it sounds crazy because we're only a week away, but there's a lot of things that can happen in the next 6-7 days. So,
of course.
No, there's many scenarios. I say 1,000. Maybe I do just pass on the race altogether. I don't know, because maybe I don't have a super strong opinion underneath. Maybe I get even a little crazier and go with 2,500 because I think she's the most likely winner on the card, more so than Golden Horn.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. And then the other thing becomes knowing that you've got to hit your minimums. You've got to be able to hit X amount of races. So if for some reason she loses and I had put X amount into it, now I may put myself in a little bit of a pickle where maybe I'm doing things that I don't necessarily want to do, and I'm already going to have a full slate of other things that I have to do while I'm there. So I don't want to try to make things more difficult than they need to be.
Right.
Let me try to – I'm going to do the same thing basically I did last year. I'm going to map out a plan. If it goes as planned, I should have a chance. If it doesn't, I'm going to lose, period.
Fair enough.
Not going to make it any crazier than it needs
Fair
to
enough.
be. But turf sprint, 5.5 on the grass. One I have not done hardly any work on just yet. I think another one, though, that chaos could happen. Jonathan, where do you go? What do you think?
I mean, I have a contract that I have to lose money on Bobby's kitten. So, look, I don't think he's going to get the same setup he got going 6.5. I think that race was built for him. He's a maniac. He won't relax. Going down the hill is perfect. I'm hopeful that there's a chance that he could kind of get a similar trip where he'll just kind of maybe relax a little bit now because they're going to go so fast in front of him. I'm curious to see if Mike rides back here. If so, that would be encouraging. I'm against Lady Shipman, and I think Undrafted is so good, but I'm just a tad bit concerned about 5.5. So, like you, I need to do a little bit more work. I can tell you right now what I will definitely do is whoever I project on the lead will be a key horse for me. Going 5.5, it's closers struggle a little bit, and so even though the two that I named I think would get closing trips, I would definitely try to find the speed horse there.
Now, and I'm going to bring up something. I hope you remember that we have a wager on this race.
Oh, we do, and I'm going to lose.
You're going to lose badly, I think.
I'm hoping that her defeat last time helps me out a little bit.
It'll help. It'll help. I still think we're talking. So it was Jonathan and a bunch of other people. Travis Stone was there after the races at Keeneland on October 4th, and I think it's a crazy statement, but Jonathan's a sharp guy. He thinks Undrafted is going to be the favorite. That was I don't want to say he still does. Maybe it was at a different time.
I'm sticking to my guns. I'll stick to it. I mean, I know I'm probably beat, but we'll find out, see what happens.
But I just thought that was.
Well, it depends on how much Wes Welker's betting.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, boy, we've got to hope that Wes is bringing the Brinks truck with him down to Lexington. That he's just going to dump $50,000 on him to win. But it's obviously just a little fun side thing. But Undrafted is supremely talented. There's no arguing that.
Sure.
Mike, do you have anything special? I told you I don't have anything.
I don't really have a strong opinion here. I think, it's interesting. I looked through all the history. There's been 6 turf sprint BCs so far. Half of them have been won by favorites. I actually think, and I mentioned it on the podcast, I think this is one of the races where anything can happen. Chaos can happen. Don't land on a horse at a short price. That said, probably Lady Shipman wins.
Filly and Mare Sprint, 7 furlongs. We've got a lot of interesting things in this race. Dan Illman and I have been doing the sort of updates and previews with some of these. Obviously, Dan and Mike Beer have been doing them too. This was one of the ones that Dan and I have done. It starts and ends with cavorting. If you think she's as good as the figures and the running style and the whole 9 are concerned, you're probably looking at her saying, she's a legitimate favorite. I'm leaning very strongly towards throwing her out completely.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to fly in here, aren't they?
You would assume that they are, but there's a lot of it that goes into it for me. I don't think that Prioress was good at all.
Right, no, I don't disagree. you know, well, I disagree that she's good. I mean, I'm not saying you're saying she's not good.
No, I think she's good, but I just don't at the price. I don't want
as a favorite, you know, I could see that she's a little vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to probably reach a little bit here. I think they're going to go fast. They're going 7. Laverdad, Stonetastic. They should all kind of guarantee that happens. Taurus was so bad last time. I just didn't really see an excuse for her. I'm going to give Chad a little bit of a shot with Wavell Avenue. I know he really wants to get her in here. It's a pretty aggressive placement by him. It's not something that he typically does, like we mentioned earlier, with that 2-year-old. And so, you know, running late, the figures might not line up, and that's fine. But I think when this thing starts to fall apart, you know, if Joel rides back, he'll sit back, make one run, and the horse can get a piece at a pretty big price.
Question for you guys. Does Laverdad go here first?
I don't think so.
Does Laverdad run in the Breeders' Cup at all?
No, I think she runs tomorrow.
Okay. So we got that out of the way, because if she runs here, she's a complete toss for me.
I don't think it's official yet, but that's just what my thought is. I think she's going to run it back.
I don't think she wants 7 furlongs, and I don't think she's fast enough to get the lead in this race. And if she doesn't get the lead, I don't see any way she wins. So, but you're right, and I agree with you, Jonathan, that there's going to be a ton of pace here. There's a horse in here I love.
Who we got?
Artemis Agritera.
Well, I was going to say, what do you do with her?
Love her. Love her.
Why is that?
Okay, Mike Hushin, there was an article on DRF.com after the Breeders' Cup last year where she was 9-2,
right,
mind you.
Yeah.
She was coming in, she was the cavorting of last year.
Yeah.
Basically, they have very similar running styles. She's actually going to be a little more forwardly placed than cavorting will be. I think the race sets up really well for her. She had some issues after that. They sent her back to training. They actually stopped on her because Mike Hushin had leukemia.
Right.
So they gave her a little time to grow up. She came back to training. Supposedly, she is training lights out. And Hushin does not do this sort of thing. He's not one that's going to be like, okay, let's just take a shot because we want to take a shot. She's there because he thinks she's good enough. And if you go back, I mean, she ran in the juvenile fillies as a 2-year-old. She ran in the sprint as a 3-year-old. She's a quality filly. The race sets up well for her. The only thing you have to deal with is that long layoff, which Hushin does really well off this layoff. She's training fantastic. All systems seem to be go here, and you're going to get her at 15-1, 20-1?
I don't think you are.
Really?
Yeah, I think she's going to be the one that people look at and they're like, well, if she runs, you know, that ballerina, she wins. And I know the layoff, but the other thing, too, with the Hushin numbers, he's good with that. We're talking about the best filly and mare sprinters in the country.
Of course, but Dame Dorothy, I don't want. Carolina, if she goes, I don't want.
But I think these are all reasons, too. Though. Like, I don't think you're going to get 20. I think you're probably going to get 10 at most.
I'll take 10. I'd take 10.
She could win. I won't be betting on it. I'll probably use her, but I just, boy. I also wonder, too, I mean, this seems very much like, yeah, she fits when she's right, but I don't think this is the plan, to bring her off of a year layoff into this race.
It certainly wasn't 6 months ago, but
I mean, I think that if push came to shove, they would have rather had, let's get a different race into her. Let's not just dive into the deepest of the deep end. We'll dive into the ocean.
Fair enough.
But she has back races that she could possibly win.
Well, and you know what it is? It's the other logical contenders, I think, have chinks in their armor. Yeah. I think I can make a case against just about any other horse in the field. And so why not take one that has the quality that has proven seems to be working well? If she'd had a race under her and finished a good second or third, she'd be half that price. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith and a little bit of trust in Hushin. But, you know, in exchange, I get a nicer price.
Filly and Mare Turf, mile 3/16. Another race I've got to do a deep dive with, so I'm not going to get into too many specifics. Looks like it could be a fun race, though. Jonathan, what do you like?
For my Euro, listening to Nick Luck, talking to Pete, this Legatissimo is supposed to be the absolute real deal. So I'm going to obviously need to dig in a little bit more on that. I think Centurio Italia is going to be completely overbet off of that last race, which was fair. I mean, it was fair. I mean, she did get a really wide trip. From the Americans, I'm going to try to hook up a little bit in here. DeCito obviously makes a lot of sense. I thought Photo Call ran really, really well last time. I've been trying to bet her all year in New York, and she finally got a good trip for me. So she might be one that I would look to hook up. But when it comes to these turf races, I know we always say it, but you kind of have to start with the Euros and work backwards from there. If not, then you just got to take a chance with a horse like Hard Not to Like or some crazy American horse that's going to present a ton more value than you'll get on someone like Tacita.
When I went back, when Wedding Val came over here to run at Arlington, I started watching many of the races, and she'd run into Legatissimo a couple times. I said to Dan, I think she's a stud. And I don't mean that, obviously she's a girl, but I think she's good. Now, will she win over here? I'm not saying that, but she's obviously a very logical runner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the race goes through, for me, I mean, I haven't done as deep a dive as I need to. For me, the race goes through the 3 Euros, the 2 that you mentioned, Legatissimo, Impassable, and also Queen's Jewel for Freddie Head, who obviously has done good things in the Breeders' Cup with nice 3-year-old fillies. So
I'm not saying. Go ahead.
I also think that more than ever that we should all take into consideration that this course that they're going to be running at Keeneland, and the grass is going to be long, and it's going to fit what Euros are used to more than anyone else. And I don't want to misquote this stat, but the California horses in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, their record's like awful. I think I heard Johnny D say it on Steve Vick, but it's like something like 0 for 30, 1 for 30, something. Look it up on your own, but it's awful on California horses in Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf races.
What is the likelihood that Stephanie's Kitten gets a little bit overlooked? I didn't love her last race, but I mean, Chad is clearly. I'm stunned. I think this may be his best training job with her, because I thought she was over the hill about 10 months ago. And the fact that she's still running competitive races, is there any scenario in which she goes off in the 8-1 range with all these Euros coming over?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think her stablemate goes off in front of her. 2 of the Euros at least go off in front of her. So you're looking at, at least 4th choice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting race. Again, I've got to do the full deep dive still. I don't want to overstep or overstate anything.
So when you say her stablemate, you mean Tacita?
Tacita, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe even Sentiero Italia goes off in front of her.
True. Possible. Yeah, there's the hot 3-year-old. Mm-hmm. Let's move to the sprint, 6 furlongs. There have been a lot of things with this race that have changed the overall complexion of it. But we're looking at it, and now it's kind of the big 2 and everyone else. Run Happy and Private Zone. I don't know, Jonathan, what you think. I don't think 6 furlongs is Private Zone's best distance. I don't think he's as fast as Run Happy early, and I don't think he's ever passed a parked car. Do you use him, or do you play against him?
Yeah, I think he's slowly becoming a play against for me, because I wanted to be against Run Happy. I wanted to think that Run Happy getting out late was a problem with him physically, and apparently that's not the case based on his workouts. I don't think Private Zone will head Run Happy, and that's the only way he can win, is when he can look another horse in the eye and not let them pass him. But I also think he's gonna throw a little damage Run Happy's way, with Run Happy trying to get that lead. I'm interested in Big Mocker. I want to do a little bit more work, but I'm interested there at a price coming late. I'm completely against a horse that a lot of people are going to try to play in a race that has a lot of pace, and that's Kobe's Back. He cannot get up going 6 furlongs. He needs at least 7.
He can't break out of the gate either. That's the biggest problem for him.
And this is also going to make Nick mad at me, but I'm going to take a look at Masochistic. He kind of went off form a little bit, but I think that's because he had to face Distinctive Passion a couple of times, and we all know that he's like a 20-4 type of horse, and I think maybe that might have broken him a little bit, and hopefully he can take back a little bit here and make one run. We'll see what happens.
Well, so it's interesting you mentioned it. Who gets the lead in this race? Who do you think is on the lead 10 steps out of the gate?
Run Happy? Matt?
Either him or Favorite Tail.
Right.
Because I just don't think Private Zone is as fast.
No, I would agree it's not Private Zone. I can see Masochistic up there, too.
Yeah, he'll be very close as well.
Yeah.
But like you say, Masochistic is one who you've got those gaudy numbers. And if you just say he's off form a little bit and he could round back into it, That's obviously interesting. I've always loved Big Mocker. I picked him last year in the sprint, and when he walked out of the gate, I said, well, this sucks. And I got bailed out by work all week. But, yeah, I think he's another one. With that way this race could set up, what's to say? There, of course, now there is another problem with him as well, though. He's gotten into a bit of a bad habit. That was the beginning of his gate issues. He's all of a sudden, he's just step slow out of the gate every time. Maybe that works to his advantage here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Absolutely. But I just don't think can get there going this sharp.
No, I agree completely. I agree.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the mile. I have fallen in love with a horse in here, and I'll wait and see what you guys have to say. But I think this is another race where people are going to look at it and say it's the Europeans, and then you look at whatever we have over here. What do you think?
Sorry, I missed your lead in. I'm daddy daycaring today. A little fella came in here and caught me off guard. So we're on the mile, right?
We are on the mile. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Hey,
no problem.
look, you got priorities.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think Tarzan's like in the credits, and so he's mad at me now. Like I said, I missed your lead in. I love Tepin. I think that I had heard through the grapevine that they kind of took it easy on her before Saratoga, and so I played against at Keeneland, and she freaked out. And so I would like to think she'll move forward off of that. Obviously, not obviously the horse, but obviously the Europeans are an issue. But I think that at 15-1, 12-1, something like that, you can hook her up in tries or exactas or something like that. She presents a lot of value.
What do you think?
I wonder if you'll get that price, though. I think she might be a little lower than that, but for me, it's kind of the Euros, and why can't we have a repeat from Caraconti?
No, I think it's possible. I think I've never really liked this horse, but it's not like his form this year has been all that good. But then again, his form coming into the Breeders' Cup last year wasn't all that good to begin with.
It was it's better this year than it was coming into last year.
And maybe he's the sort of horse that just really takes to the Lasix and takes to the North American style. Yeah, he's obviously a player.
No, I don't disagree at all.
So I'm guessing. Well, I don't know. I won't guess. What are you thinking?
I love Impassable.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what she'll be for a price. I don't know how good she actually is. But I love that after that long layoff, the way that she won that last race. And I've got to do a little bit more homework just to really do a full-blown, marry myself to her. But the big improvement from an early 3-year-old to a late 3-year-old, you could see it in that last race. I thought she was very, very good. And she'll probably be where I end up going.
That makes sense. I think for me, it's the Euros, and then, boy, I mean, I guess if I'm able to get a huge price on someone like Grand Arch, who seems to like the course, and I think a flat mile is better for him than some of these other distances. If he's completely overlooked, he's someone I might try and get involved underneath. But it's hard for me to make a case that anything I've seen in North America this year is better than what they're going to send over in this race.
The Juvenile, a race where I haven't done a deep dive just yet. We'll wait and see how things shake down. Boy, I think this is a year where you could go any number of ways. Jonathan, what do you think?
This is going to be one of those spots where it's more who I don't want to play, and then I got to figure out the rest of it. I don't want Nyquist. Right. Not that I don't think that he's a good horse, but I just don't want Nyquist. And I don't want Cocked and Loaded. I had this thought that Cocked and Loaded was going the wrong direction, and then he freaked the other day at Churchill. I'm going to just latch back onto the fact that he's going to go the other direction. I bet Stick Stately Dude at Keeneland that weekend. He didn't run very well. I know he was training up a storm. He got bet down like crazy on the board based on, I think on just a workout buzz. And so hopefully I'm going to watch that back and see if I can find some trouble there with him and a reason to kind of get back going in his direction. And then the horse that just broke his maiden Conquest, Big E. The reason I fell in love with Bobby's Kitten at the beginning is I knew they named – Ramsey said, save it for a good one, name him after Bobby Frankel. I don't know the guy's name, but the owner of Conquest Stable, his name is – he's Big E. So they named this horse after him. They've always thought well of him, and so for that reason, I'll give him a little bit of a shot.
Interesting. So I tweeted it out, and Matt, I think you know where I'm going here. I don't know if he's my pick. He's probably going to be everybody's wise guy's pick. But if you're a trip handicapper, there's one horse in here that you're really excited about betting, and that's Unbridled Outlaw in the trip that he got last out in the Iroquois. I think he's going to be the wise guy horse. I don't know if he's your most likely winner, but he's one that's interesting if he, for whatever reason, gets overlooked. I actually do like Cocked and Loaded. I really liked that last race because he made what I thought was a premature move against a hot pace, and he continued on. So it shows to me, even though he was starting to go off form, maybe he actually wants to go a little longer, and what he was winning early as a 2-year-old was just pure talent, and maybe this horse is better going long. He could be a little overlooked. And I think Greenpoint Crusader is one that seems to be coming into the race really well. I'm completely against Nyquist for some of the reasons that you've mentioned. I just don't think that. I think ultimately he's a sprinter. And at a short price, he's going to have to prove to me that he wants to beat this field.
Let's go to the turf. 1.5 miles. Obviously, this race starts and ends with Golden Horn. If he runs a race similar to the Arc, he's going to win. It's a matter of who runs second. Now, if you want to question, is he coming into this race in peak form? Because this is more or less the icing on the cake, because they've accomplished everything they wanted to accomplish with him. Then maybe you want to take a shot against. This is likely going to be your heaviest favorite of the weekend. Are you going to try to play against him, or are you just going to say, you know what, he's the best horse, he's probably going to win?
Yeah, and I'll probably jump on board. I would think that I'll have some consideration for the gutsy, cool as ever Pizza Man. I mean, that horse is so cool. I mean, that race he ran in the Shadow Old Turf Mile, I mean, I know myself and people I was sitting with, we all thought, like, this horse has no chance. I think we were actually making fun of the trainer a little bit. Like, why would he cut this horse back to a mile? And he ran huge that day. My shocking, crazy opinion is that I'm going to probably use Shining Copper underneath in one of these weird races where we in American racing, we always let these speed horses go off and just keep going. And he ran a really gutsy race in Arlington Million. And so getting him in third of a try at 45 or 50 to 1, I think would be pretty cool.
What do you think, Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't invest much in this race, if anything at all. But, if I did, it would be probably Golden Horn on top and trying to get some value underneath. And I'd be maybe playing out a few different horses that I think maybe are regressing or maybe, beating up on some inferior competition. I agree with you, Jonathan. I was kind of, it took me a long time to come around to the Pizza Man, but he's made me a believer. I think he can run a big race, and I think he can hit the board too. So I might do maybe some tries and supers where I'd be using Golden Horn with the Pizza Man.
Yeah, I think the Pizza Man, again, I've been one of the people that have just bashed this horse time and time again, and I have to admit now, he's a good horse.
He is.
I mean, that race he ran last time, I think that was his best race at the Arlington Million.
I would agree. I would agree. He was the only one moving late, and it was a huge move.
On to the Classic, and again, if you've listened, if you're watching, thank you for toughing it out. It's been a long go of it. We'll wrap it up here with the biggest show on turf. It's not on turf, obviously, but it's on the dirt. 1.25 miles. The race begins and ends with American Pharoah. Do you think he is the horse with the tactical advantage who everyone and their brother is going to be just drooling over? Look, he's going for the Grand Slam. If he can win the Classic, he'll be the first horse to ever do this because he's the first Triple Crown winner of the Breeders' Cup era. I don't think he's a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination, but I would not argue with anyone that turns to me and says, you know what, he's just the best horse and he's going to get the best setup. He's going to win. I wouldn't argue with anyone. For me, it probably, again, comes down to greed. And I go, he's just not going to be enough of a price for me. I've maintained all along. I think this horse goes off at 6 or 7 to 5, and I think a lot of people think he'll be higher than that. Maybe he will be, but where do you overall stand? We teased it a little bit at the beginning. Do you think he, ultimately, let's just make it simple. Do you think he wins?
Yes, if I had to pick a horse, I would pick that horse. With that being said, I'm completely against Honor Code. and I am extremely interested in using Smooth Roller. I thought, we saw him break his maiden we were there for the tournament at Santa Anita, and it was super impressive. And he obviously came back to run some really good races and got a good number for those races. And he's a little bit under the radar. I think could kind of sit in that second flight behind American Pharoah. And if the other ones, if he went too slow, he could stay on and be involved. If Toneless wears blinkers, I will play him. If he doesn't wear blinkers, I'm against him. So we'll see what happens with that.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, if say my mother were at the track and she said, I just want you to tell me who's likely to win so I can put $2 and have a horse to cheer for, I would say bet American Pharoah. I agree with you, though, that at the price he's likely to be, I won't fault anybody for taking a shot against him, because I think he's facing the best field he's ever faced. And in the Classic, you get these horses where the public goes a little overboard. The Bernardinis who get overbet. I mean, great, he was a great horse, he ran well, but, it just provides value for the Invasors of the field. So, I'm actually kind of with Jonathan here. I think the interesting horse is Smooth Roller. Tonalist, he's kind of like a better version of Wicked Strong. We mentioned in the mile, he's running his race every time. Sometimes he's running into better. Sometimes the pace just doesn't really set up for him, like has happened in 3 of his last 4 races. But I think he's one that's going to present value and certainly can run well. That said, I loved him last year, and where did that get me?
You know what? I've gone through this race, a million times. And I said I was almost ready to say I'm going to pick Beholder. There's a horse who I never thought, I still don't even necessarily believe myself when I'm saying this. Travis Stone brought it up when we were down there in Lexington. He goes, I'm interested in Frosted. And I said, yeah, he can't. I mean, he's been beaten by Pharoah 3 different times, no matter how different styles, whatever it was. I'm wondering if I'm going to end up going back to, rewind the clock 6 months. I picked him to beat American Pharoah in the Derby. I'm almost wondering. I loved his Pennsylvania Derby. I thought he was late with the lead change, and that bothers me a little bit. But if there's a scenario where, let's say, Beholder is right and she goes after Pharoah, or vice versa, those two end up hooking up, doesn't Frosted sit the trip this time? Doesn't he get, I don't want to say the Keen Ice trip, because he's not going to be that far back, I don't think, but doesn't he get the Keen Ice trip this time around if those two hook up? And if either one of them comes up wanting, isn't he the one that takes over?
Or Smooth Roller.
Or Smooth Roller,
yeah.
But I can understand if people want to question Smooth Roller, like, is it a mirage?
Quality-wise,
Have you just, what have you really been doing? Are you fool's gold?
Yeah, you beat Bayern.
Frosted, you only lost to Pharoah by 2 lengths.
Right.
When you fired your shot at him and you gave him everything he could handle.
Right.
I don't know. Am I crazy?
No, I think it's one of those situations where if you were to pick Frosted, because I respect your opinion, it would only make me like American Pharoah more. Just because, like you said, he's had 3 opportunities and he's tried it 3 different ways and he couldn't beat him. Obviously, the Belmont, I don't think anyone was beating American Pharoah that day, especially with the pace that he set. And maybe even Derby Day, but Travers Day, he had every opportunity to beat that horse. He had a race under his belt from the Jim Dandy. Everything could have gone his way, and it didn't. And then him coming back to win the PA Derby just kind of makes me feel better about what happened to American Pharoah.
I know. I think that's a totally valid thought, and that's what I've thought all along until this week when, again, I tweeted it the other night. I go, I'm just in my own head now at this point.
What's Honor Code going to go off at? Are people going to still play him?
Well, that was, so I was going to ask 2 questions. The first question, and I'll ask the first one first, and then we'll get to the odds. What do you guys do with Glen Eagles?
Matt?
The only thing that I don't think, I thought people were very hard on this horse for the way that he ran in that QE2. I'm not holding that against him at all. It was his first start in forever. Right. I'm looking at it strictly as a prep. Now, Illman brought up the point, and I think there's validity to it. Now, as much as Aidan O'Brien wants to win the Classic, he wants it bad. It's got to be a sort of a confident thing, a confident sort of thought that if you're still going to go on with this horse, you're not going to ship him just for the sake of shipping him. I don't know. Again, who knows? I'm not going to use him. but I wouldn't fault anyone that said, you know what, I'll take a wild card.
So Aiden's had a lot of success in North America, probably more than any other European trainer. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he certainly won the Breeders' Cup, and he's won other races in North America. I looked. Glen Eagles is coming off a 14-day layoff. I wondered how many times he's done that. He's actually done that 14 times over the last 5 years.
Celebration, I believe.
He's 0 for 14, only one hit the exacta, and I think only 2 others ran third. He's a little bit of a play against for me if he takes money, and I expect he might because all of the European bettors will be focusing on him. Pedigree-wise, I mean, the dam is a full to Giants Causeway, so there's no reason to think he should take to the dirt if he's good enough. I just
the only argument I would have with that is those other 14. That race 2 weeks prior was the goal.
Was it?
Yeah, generally speaking.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's normally getting a prep into his big horses to run over here, to ship them over. I think that, honestly, the only reason he ran this horse 2 weeks ago, or last week, was because he knew he needed to get a race into him. He needed to get some fitness out of him.
Sure.
They have been saying for months now that this was the ultimate goal for him. So that's the only thing I would go against the stat with, but it's a valid stat. I mean, look, it hasn't been successful for him.
Right.
Let's get to the odds and then let's wrap it up because we've gone super long.
Well,
honor code, I don't know, honestly. I didn't like going into the Kelso. I said Jonathon knows my thoughts on this horse. Look, you're a one-run closer, and I mean you're coming from out of the clouds. I didn't want him in the Kelso. If he ran his race, he was going to win. And Javier was all over this thing on the far turn, and he just didn't. He didn't pick his feet up, and I understand it's a prep, and Sugar's old school. Now, if you believe the last workout, and Dave Grenning said he looked like he was breathing fire out there, and you look at the time of it, 58-1. Look, he's clearly coming into it in good form. I don't want a horse, not on top anyway, that could be 6 to 8 to 1 and has to rely on everything breaking down for him to win. And I don't think he's going to have it all go his own way down there.
I would agree. I actually did a little bit of a priced up, not a value line, but what I expect the actual odds to be. I had Pharaoh, and he may even be lower than this. I had Pharaoh at 2 to 1, Beholder at 3 to 1, Honor Code at 6, Tonalist at 8. For me, the question mark is Glen Eagles. I mean, how much money does Glen Eagles take? He's probably going to be about 10, is my guess.
10, 12.
But yeah, I'm kind of with you. The pluses and minuses. That last race is not real. It was a prep and everything, but at the same time, it wasn't terribly impressive for Honor Code in the Kelso. However, I think maybe what they tried to do there is have him sit a little closer so that he's not 15 or 20 lengths out of it early.
I think that kills him, though. I think that dulls the kick.
It could very well.
Yeah.
He's the one I don't know what to do with. He's the one I really don't know what to do with because he'll be running on, but I think he might be running on too late. And maybe he runs Tonalist's race last year, where he's way back and he runs on and he gets a nice 5th, but that doesn't do you any good.
What do you think, JK?
A good friend of mine said it best about Honor Code. He's a one-turn horse. The only way he can win 2 turns is if he gets a 1-turn setup. And that's exactly what happened in the Whitney with Liam's map going freakishly fast. And he was all out, and needed every inch of the stretch to beat him. I don't see that happening. I don't see him getting that pace set up. I don't see him running down these types of horses. And he's almost like don't use him in third at your own risk, but I don't see him hitting the exacta.
If you needed, and we'll close with this, if you needed a sort of funsy value kind of bombaroo, is it Smooth Roller for you?
Yeah, it's Smooth Roller for me for sure. I mean, FNX will be a little bit interesting with Mike Smith getting on board. I just picture him riding that horse like he rode Drosselmeyer a little bit, and just he'll just kind of plug along and be involved. But yeah, for sure, a price horse for me would be Smooth Roller.
Mike?
Yeah, I think Smooth Roller. I just don't know what the price is going to be. I think he might be 15 to 1. I think you tweeted it. If he was trained by Bob Baffert, he'd be 10 to 1.
10, yeah.
But yeah, just because from an upside standpoint, I think we haven't seen. I don't know if we've seen the best from him. You can argue that we haven't. I'll play a little game before we end it.
We got it. We got to end
real
now,
quick.
man. We're on 90 minutes.
Odds. Who's lower odds, Frosted or Keen Ice?
Frosted.
Frosted.
Yeah, no question.
Okay.
Keen Ice is going to be 15-1.
Yeah, Frosted.
Yeah. Frosted, do you think Frosted's 12?
Frost is 10.
Triple Crown
Sounds well.
name recognition. Kieran Frosted.
Keen Ice beat. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I don't think it'll be all that close. But my only thing with Smooth Roller, I loved him coming out of that race, and then I look at it more and more, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I'm buying it. I love him. I think he's a really talented horse. I think next year may be a big year for him. But he's clearly, I mean, there's a reason you debut as a 4-year-old in June.
Right.
I mean, that's not. It couldn't have been the plan.
It's a lot to chew off.
So we've kept the viewers and listeners much too long.
The 5 of you that are still here,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Jonathon Kinchen, best talking to you. Good stuff as always. I will see you in a few days down in Lexington. Thanks for joining us. Mike, this will be the finale. I can't even speak. This will be the final podcast for me.
Yep.
You guys will be tackling 1 or 2 next week.
At least one. Monday, it's going to be Pete, me, Bob Nastanovich, and Marcus Hirsch talking specifically about the Euros. So
Okay.
we'll be diving deep into each of the Euros. That'll be a fun one. And then next week, we got a bunch of webinars. That'll be good, too.
Very good. We got all sorts of Breeders' Cup stuff. Obviously, you're home here, DRF.com. You've got everything you need, videos, PPs, news, all the best. DRF.com, DRF Live. Thanks for listening to DRF Plays Podcast. We'll see you next week. Breeders' Cup is upon us.